Hello, you're listening to Living Beyond Limits, and I'm your host, Marcy Langlois. Thank you so much for joining me today. I started a deep dive into some woo-woo things that have really worked for me in the last episode. So if you haven't listened to it, make sure you check it out after this one. Being human isn't for the faint of heart. Life is constantly throwing things at us from the time that we're born. We each come into this world with an original blueprint. That blueprint that we're born with is the divine wisdom and consciousness that creates life and the innate wisdom in our body. Our body is a blank canvas wired by millions of years of evolution in our DNA. As we go through life, we end up with the imprints from our experiences on the blueprint. Every single experience that we have is imprinted in our cells and commonly referred to as cellular memory. You know when you went to the grocery store with your mom when you were 5 and she bought you a helium-filled balloon? Remember that? So excited? Yeah, well then you walked out the door and the wind came through and took that helium balloon right out of your little hand and you cried for hours about your balloon. That's an imprint on your blueprint. Every imprint leaves an impression. Whether the event is something simple like losing your balloon at the grocery store or something incredibly traumatic happening, each event in your life leaves its mark on you. Those imprints fragment us because they essentially mark up the blueprint. Picture this. You work all day long on a painting, and just like when you feel like you're finishing up, someone comes by and they take all that remaining paint left and they smear it all over your painting. That's sort of what happens with life. We're born with this masterpiece with all the wisdom and consciousness, and then life happens, and it completely muddies up the blueprint. I mean, come on. Some days they're full of rainbows and puppy dogs, and other days it's like you're getting knuckle sandwiches, one right after another, all day long. Life is hard, but we can totally do it. The entire reason that we're here living this life is for all the experiences, regardless if we like them or we don't. I find that the more fragmented that we become, the more difficult life is. In direct response to pain, we create coping mechanisms to deal with the uncomfortableness of the mess on our internal canvas. We start shopping, drinking, eating, having unfulfilling relationships, maybe even affairs. The list is infinite, really. We think that if we can avoid ourselves, that we can experience less pain. I mean, the thought never even occurs to us to try and change or fix the imprint. That's because, though, usually we aren't even aware that what we're really trying to avoid is ourselves. Unfortunately, there are unintended consequences that come from ineffective coping strategies like anxiety, depression, and a whole host of health issues. When we're deep in dysfunction, we operate from our fragmented selves rather than our whole selves. You know when you get emotionally hijacked? Like you're having this discussion with a friend about a topic that you feel passionate about. The next thing you know, you're completely off the deep end. You're angry and shouting, and this really nice, calm discussion went from a healthy, normal chat to this full-on sideways event full of reactivity and emotion. And then all of a sudden, for a brief moment, you have a flash of clarity and you can see you're acting like a total freaking lunatic, right? You're all bent out of shape and all sorts of things. And then you're wondering like, how did I get here? Oh, I hate it when this happens to me. This has happened to me more times than I can count, unfortunately. These kinds of moments are unsettling. It's like, where did that come from? Where did that behavior come from? It took me years to put all of this together and figure out exactly why I would end up off the rails. It turns out that the part of you that just had that huge reaction, that part is your fragmented self showing up. For example, this happens to me in my marriage. Tracy can say something to me that I hear completely different than what she was intending. All of a sudden, a younger part of me gets triggered from one of the imprints, and now I'm feeling totally abandoned and 5 years old. The next thing you know, I'm in total fear and I'm completely shut down. Can you relate at all? I mean, this does not feel great in the moment, but it is very great information for the future. Every single time that I have a reaction to something that's disproportionate to the events at hand, otherwise known as a trigger, I now know this is a part of me that needs my attention. Whatever part of me is experiencing this reaction is needing something from me, something like possibly soothing or just an acknowledgement, reframing, or reassurance. This fragmented part of myself is experiencing a similar feeling from sometime earlier in my life when I felt abandoned. And taking time to acknowledge this is the first step towards healing and wholeness. By taking the time to tend to this part of myself with kindness and love, which is what that part needed earlier in life, then those small interventions moves the imprint off from the system and the body back closer to the blueprint. The nervous system totally will respond to this and acknowledge this as fulfilling the original need. And that's where the healing happens. And now here's the amazingness of our body, the wisdom of consciousness, and the miracle of life. That same situation presents itself again, and you won't react. Or maybe you'll just react differently. No matter what, something will change because you've done the work. For me, this feels like a miracle because I personally, unfortunately, have caused so much unintended harm when I've been in those situations and I'm completely triggered. If you believe that the way you were created and the way life has affected you have led you to where you are today, let me share the proof that I've found that we can use this information to heal and live beyond the limits of those imprints on our blueprint. It sounds really simple, but it's not when you really think about it. And I'm going to take you all the way through it. The mystery and awe of nature. So here it is. Everything in my life can be a hot mess. Work can be a disaster. I can be worried about my daughter and something that she might be dealing with. Can have concern about the people in the world that are unhoused or the suffering of those that live in war-torn countries and all the other things that might fill my mind. Or maybe for you, things show up differently, like how you're going to pay your bills or how you need to end this relationship, working out custody battle with your ex-partner, or, whatever, some other cluster that you're trying to manage. I don't know if it happens for you like this, but when I get focused on all of these things, then my mood can deteriorate rapidly. Things start to feel hopeless. I feel demoralized and like, what is the point to all of this, right? When things get like this, then I know I have to find a way out quickly. My go-to is nature. The reason being is because it never disappoints. Have you ever spent time observing nature? I don't mean taking a speed walk through the park or running 5 miles, but what I'm curious about is if you ever sat down and fully immersed yourself in nature and all its wonder. It's one of my most favorite things to do, and it can completely shift my perspective about everything. Have you ever taken the time to sit and listen to the birds? Well, I didn't either, so don't feel bad about being honest about that. What I've discovered, though, is that they have full-blown conversations. It seems that each species has a different call. Then think about all the clouds that are passing overhead and all the different shapes, all different kinds of clouds produced by weather patterns changing and atmospheric pressures. Like, how does that all happen, right? And how does it produce what you're seeing? It's amazing. The repeating patterns in nature, wherever you look. Take a moment and notice. Look at the flower that's opening and notice how each petal is identical. And it opens in this very synchronized way. And it creates a very specific shape. There's an order to nature that brings me comfort and peace. It's so mind-blowing to me how much our bodies replicate the earth. Let me run through a few things that I found. Did you know that our bodies are made up roughly of 70% water? And that is approximately the same amount of water that covers the Earth's surface. We share the same elements as a star. So the composite of who we are is the same as what a star is. The Earth has rivers to move the water, and the body has blood vessels and veins to move the water, right? And they look similar. We're both ecosystems. The Earth has millions of species, and the body has thousands. Now, if you take a leaf and you look under a microscope and you look closely, you're going to see how the leaf looks really similar to the human heart. There's research out there that points to humans having roughly the same number of neurons in the human brain as there are galaxies in the observable universe. I mean, this kind of stuff makes me feel like there's just absolutely no coincidences in life. All of the similarities make me feel like there's order, connection, purpose. Take a moment and think about all of the things that we take for granted every single day that happen. For example, the power of the moon to move the ocean. I mean, the ocean never stops moving. I mean, oh my God, think about that. It's almost as amazing as thinking about the fact that you're alive and breathing. You haven't told your body once today to pump your heart or to take a breath. It's just doing it. We are sort of like the ocean. We just keep moving. And if all of this isn't enough to just blow your mind wide open, then how about Dr. Masaru Emoto's work that points to the possibility that our thoughts, emotions, and state of being affect the structure of water? He spent years subjecting water to different emotions, thoughts, and states. And then he went on to photograph how the structure of the water physically changed based on what the water was subjected to. Think about this for a moment. Your thoughts and feelings have the capacity to impact the structure of water. He shot that in the photographs, right? That water is completely outside and separate of you. So what does this mean for you? If your body is made up of almost 70% water, then what do you think happens to the water within your body based on what you're thinking and feeling? And then take it a step further. And how do you think your thoughts and emotions affect the 70% of water on Earth and all other living beings that are made up of 70% water? I mean, come on, right? I love woo-woo as much as the next person, but even more, I love it when there are things like I have mentioned that are directly connected and then some research to support some of the theories by science. It makes it a little less woo-woo, right? With the array of stuff that life can throw at you, sometimes life definitely can leave you feeling all sorts of things. Everything from overwhelmed, angry, sad, anxious, depressed, amazing, inspired, joyful, and the whole gamut in between. When I connect all the ways that our body is amazing and divine to the incredible planet that we live on, something deep within me resonates with the idea of the order of it all. The order creates a sense of calmness for me, knowing that there is more here than I might be acknowledging in the moment. Rather than operating from the place of fear and overwhelm, I can move into a place of trust, curiosity, and awe. One of my favorite quotes by Viktor Frankl is, "If there is any meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in suffering." I think that's what we're all looking for, aren't we? To know that somewhere, for some reason, all of this makes sense, even the most incomprehensible things. Knowing that there is meaning provides some sort of hope that this isn't in vain. We can heal. We can live amazing lives. No matter what your blueprint looks like today, there are signs all around us that give us hope that there's so much more goodness and beauty in our lives than we can fully understand. Friends, thank you so much for joining me today. What a fun episode to put together, truthfully. I was a skeptic of woo-woo for a long time until I started to see how these things worked in my life. I hope that if you feel like you're at a crossroads where continuing on the same path feels futile, but you aren't quite sure where to look next, that you'll try some of these techniques that I've laid out over the last 2 episodes. I would love it if you would reach out to me on my website and let me know of your own personal path of woo-woo. If you found this episode helpful or fascinating in some way, please share it with your community of friends and coworkers. Please follow me on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok for tidbits in between episodes. Have an incredible week and aim to live beyond any limit that might be thrown your way.